composition of any Super Bowl committee, usually it's one and done.
That's correct.
Talk about the sustaining nature of it.
Well, you're right. It's usually one and done, and this will be my third one as chairman.
Yeah.
And I chased a lot of them in between. And thanks to Steve Ross, as you know, we talked about it before. I mean, for him, he tried to go the public route. It didn't work out. So you know what? He ponied up to the table, wrote a check for $550 million, and we have a brand new stadium. And now we're back into rotation.
And it is, some people want to make it more complicated. It effectively is that simple.
Yeah.
And when you realize the life of building facilities in the NFL and other leagues with mega events, the idea of promising giving Super Bowls and the economic impact it generates, it would more than pay for the public money that's allocated. South Florida sometimes gets it, sometimes doesn't. Steve took it upon himself, and here we are.
Here we are. Not only that, and thanks to Steve, the Miami Open tennis tournament, which left Key Biscayne, is at Hard Rock Stadium.
Dirty little secret, by the way. We don't know that yet, but you watch the finals of that tennis tournament, you're liking Wimbledon.
Yeah. So and then hey, listen, you got to give them credit. And by the way, I've already signed the papers. It's an invitation only now. It's not bid. And the NFL's changed their way to do business.
Right.
I've signed the papers for 25, 26, or 27.
So are you exclusively? We got to go through you? Is that
No. But we're hoping the NFL makes a decision, and we're back in the rotation.
Right. And by the way, the whole idea of the politics of Super Bowl awarding has been a significant issue for the league. Part of what they need to do, they've got to balance their priorities. They got to make sure that they spread it around. They got to make sure they keep their TV partners happy. They got to make sure they got to provide leverage to build facilities.
Absolutely.
The Minnesotas, the Detroits, probably had enough of cold weather cities for a while.
Yep.
Now LA, which is not as hard a problem, nor Vegas,
right,
nor Phoenix.
Right.
So think about the competition you have. It's not as easy today as it used to be, is it?
No, it's not. Listen, we're blessed. We're on our 11th record-breaking Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And we've known what Super Bowls are. They're good for your city. They're good for business. It starts right at your airport. You're bringing people in your community. Now it's Uber and Lyft. It's also rental cars, but it's Uber and Lyft.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge economic generator. And so a lot of cities are figuring out, wow, we should have a Super Bowl in our community. It's good. It's good for business.
Let's talk about the economic impact for a while, because people's eyes, my perspective, is they're glazed over. They see a 500 million, 600 million number. They don't know what it means. But even the cynics can understand Super Bowl 1 week, 2 weeks, cruise ships, restaurants on the way to other communities. So talk about that, sir.
Well, it's what I was saying a few minutes ago. Now, corporate America at its best. They're going to come to your community. They're going to spend. They're going to have an open checkbook. They're entertaining their number one client, at this game. And by the way, the game is a 3.5-hour game. What's really important is all the activities around the game and all the people coming into town. In our case, we're going to have 65,000 people will go to the actual game, but there's going to be maybe a couple 100,000 people in your community for the parties, for the entertainment, entertaining clients, moving people around. I mean,
they don't know what to do other than spend a lot of money.
Exactly. Right? And listen, we're the envy of America with the restaurants we have between the 3 counties, the hotels that we have. So it's just going to be fabulous.
A little self-serving for your perspective, but people don't know it. Let's talk about the dimension and the volume of the cats you have to herd. In communities where there is a stadium in a downtown, there's one political jurisdiction you have to serve. You have at least 3 counties. How many cities?
Oh my God, there's
Pick it up.
There's 35 cities just in Miami-Dade County alone.
And then times probably 2.5.
Yeah.
So you got almost 100 cities.
Yeah.
And they want a return on their respective investments.
That's right.
The hotels, the
They
restaurants.
do.
How do you balance it?
Well, it's real simple. It's simple math. And I boil it down to this. A 30-second spot in Super Bowl is $5 million. Do you know how many 30-second spots we're going to get out of this?
Yeah.
When you have 5,000 press from all over the world, when this game is going to be broadcast to 170 countries. Right. So when you boil it down to the simplistic math of a 30-second spot, the local elected officials get it. They see the return immediately.
Yeah, but you've got to do a major everywhere selling job, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. The politics on Miami Beach, where you were born,
right.
And the city side, the county, Broward County, Palm Beach County. It's just and everybody wants a piece of the pie.
And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is radio, so let me describe it. Rodney Barreto, when I first met him, he was strapping good looking.
Yeah.
Look at him now. In all seriousness, another context too, it's an important issue. The NFL has asked more and more from the respective host committee.
Yeah.
Some would call it extortion. Most would call it legitimate business bidding of one city versus another.
Yeah.
Respond to that kind of process and the pay-to-play now, what it takes, which is a lot more than...
It's kind of, when I look back 20 years ago, and when Jim Stieg ran Super Bowls, we would do the Super Bowl on a handshake. We would get the contract after the Super Bowl came and left the community.
Right.
And Jim was a man of his word, and it was great. But, today's the way the economics lay out, yes, it's the Super Bowl, the NFL is very demanding, and they almost kind of block you out of a lot of the fundraising because it's their sponsors first.
Right.
And then so we got to go find people who traditionally are not in that space to help underwrite bringing the Super Bowl to town.
Block you out of the fundraising, but not trying to stir the pot, demanding a pretty significant check.
Yeah, well, listen, it's still the number one sporting event in the world, and you know what? And when you're the number one sporting event in the world, you can demand a lot.
Yeah.
And listen, we also, we held our own. They wanted a bunch of tax reliefs on a bunch of different things that we did not agree with them and did not give them.
Right.
So it's a give and take.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to be really incredible because the last time Super Bowl was in Miami was 10 years ago.
Right.
And we have a different community there. If you stop and think about it, there was no Bright Line train coming to downtown Miami. The Tri-Rail didn't have a depot in downtown Miami. We didn't have a tunnel. We didn't have a Perez Art Museum. We didn't have a museum of science. We didn't have the brand new condos in downtown and the new hotels. And you can make the same argument in Broward and in Palm Beach County. All these communities have just blown up.
The other piece of Super Bowl rotation from a national perspective, I think, is that, I don't know if this is news, but it's cold in Minnesota. I don't know if this is news, but it's pretty cold in Atlanta. And I think when we're ready for a 2020 event, all of the activating corporations that have put a 2-year hiatus on golf tournaments and everything warm now has Miami, Tampa, and LA back to back to back. What does that mean?
It means it's going to be more dollars to us because they've been holding their money. And we experienced that when they had the Super Bowl in Detroit. And it was obviously very cold there. They were coming to Miami after Detroit, and they said, we're holding our money. We'll see you in Miami. Yeah. And so you're going to get that. Listen, I was just in a meeting with the folks from Minnesota. It was minus 50 degrees yesterday. Right. And they said to me, if we were there today, everything was shut down. Right. The airport, the Super Bowl Live, volunteers, everything would have been shut down. So we're listen, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to make a prediction. It's going to be blue skies, balmy weather, and 72 degrees in Miami.
And by the way, Rodney doesn't go out on a limb very much. That's about as far as he gets. And the last time it snowed in Miami, I remember it was 1977.
Yeah, exactly.
We all understand that. So for Rodney Barreto personally, you've been involved in a lot of this. You've had an incredible run at mixing civic activism with local success. What's next for you?
I think we're going to chase another Super Bowl. I'd love to get another one for our community. I think Steve Ross deserves having another one for stepping up and making his investment. Got folks like Tom Garfinkel who just do an incredible job executing all the improvements there. So the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely, and part of it is not. We all look back at the respective sports stuff in Miami, and in seriousness, sports has grown a long way.
Oh yeah.
We were originally dealing with that 30, 40, 50 years ago when it was everybody coming from somewhere else and it was fun and sun. It is now a very significant part of an economic engine that's called tourism and economic development in South Florida, not just Miami.
Yeah, it's funny, to all your listeners out there, Rick, I remember when you built the arena, the old Miami Arena, and all the politics you had to go through, whether we put skyboxes or we don't put skyboxes, and the way that product ended.
Rodney Barreto, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right, my friend.
Rick Horrow, speak with you soon. Well, I guarantee